All right, here we go. Back to the world's longest water-cooled build by JayzTwoCents. Actually, that's not even true. This is nowhere near a year old yet.
The LandCool 216 mid-tower case from Lee & Lee offers a host of premium features without the premium price tag. Modular motherboard placements allow for either a higher or lower position to accommodate optimal air cooler and water cooling configurations, ensuring the most room possible. And the pre-installed dual 160mm front fans and 140mm exhaust PWM fans provide great airflow due to the continuous mesh design in order to keep higher power components as cool as possible. Available in white or black, RGB and non-RGB versions, and starting at $99, the LandCool 216 from Lee & Lee provides great value alongside its great feature set. To learn more, follow the sponsored link in the description below.
Okay, so in our last part, so I'm like part 4 or 5 now of working on this build for my friend here. Dubbed the Mega Man build, even though it's not like anything super Mega Man themed yet. We might bust out the 3D printer, but I gotta build it first before I integrate any of that stuff. I talked about the fact that when I come out of the active backplate water block for the Strix 4090, that I wanted to go to a reservoir here and then back to the CPU. Now this will be the first time I've ever done anything like this, because I've always just had a regular reservoir pump combo thing like this, and then a normal loop. My concern was whether or not a reservoir here would be able to pull from it properly, and I can't imagine any reason why it wouldn't, because as long as the tube is completely submerged and the return line is completely submerged, any air should get trapped up there and it should just vacuum pull just fine. I also was thinking this gives me another place to fill more fluid in the loop, so I could fill this up entirely, and then this would allow me to also let air out as it's filling, and then as it comes up to this level, I could top it off here, cap this off, top this off. So I think it would be nice. So anyway, it arrived. I'm using the EK Quantum Volume, which is essentially the same thing as this, what do they call this here? The FLT, I forgot what they call it, the kinetic. This is the same thing, only it doesn't have a pump built in. So this is perfect. It's a 120. I've got to keep my fingers crossed that it fits right here, because as you can see, it's kind of tight right there. The other thing too, you can see I've got some more tubing on here we'll talk about in a sec. I need to switch these fittings right here. I did flow test, by the way. Blowing in this tube, air does come out here. So it's weird. I wanted to do like a parallel loop, but I talked about why that doesn't work. But I am gonna switch the outlet to over here, because I would have assumed it would have been a standard terminal where it goes through the bottom block, comes out here, goes straight across, goes through the block, and comes out here. But apparently it goes in there, comes out here, does a Z flow over to here, and then goes through the block and comes out here. So the reason why air was coming out here when I was testing it is because it's just going across and straight out. So I need to switch these two, which would have, technically what would have happened if I had left it like this is it just would have bypassed the block, and the fluid through here wouldn't have flowed, and then we would not have had an active backplate. We'd have a passive cooled backplate with fluid not moving. So I need to switch those two, which is actually good because now it gives me a little bit more room to get over to here. It does have RGB, so it gives me another area to be able to have lighting. Also too, if you guys didn't see, I was able, as you can see, to get really good drilled holes and tap threads in acrylic. So everyone telling me, Jay, you're doing it wrong. Well, apparently wrong was right in this instance. There are ways I could do it better, but you know what? I got the job done. So let's see if this guy is going to fit. The question is this the size of a standard 120 fan? Them holes line up perfectly. Nice. Okay, so this is gonna be sick. Let me get this mounted real quick. All right, so there it is installed. And as you can see, I've got multiple ports. If I look along the exit port here for the GPU, doesn't perfectly line up with that left port, but I have two input ports to come off the GPU, and I've got one outlet port there on the right. And they're separated by that anti-Venturi stick sort of sticking up in the middle there. So I need to keep them separated with that, otherwise it can create a bit of a Venturi effect. Also too, you'll notice they're lower than the CPU block. So I had considered even for a moment, maybe drilling a new port that was perfectly the right height, but it would barely be above the existing port and too close to those threads. So I don't want to screw with that. So I think I'm just gonna have to make that work with the way I've got it. I wanna talk about this tube here for a second too. You'll notice it's installed and it's got 90-degree fittings on here. I did do one also too that is a bent tube. So one without fittings and one with fittings. And I let my friend decide which he liked best. He chose the fittings. He likes the way this looks with this whole like kind of a Mario pipes, if you will, even though this is a Mega Man type build. He likes the fittings in there. I just happen to have these on hand, so I threw those in there and he liked them. So we're gonna leave those in there for now. So now I've got to figure out my runs between here and here and here and there, which is extra work and it's unnecessary, but I think it'll go really well with the whole idea of this build. So here's what I think I'm gonna do with this tube right here is I'm gonna go with a 90-degree down, but as you can see looking at this angle, it's at kind of like a 45-degree angle. And then I've got the piece that I showed you guys that we ended up not using because he wants the adapter fittings on there. I can just trim that down and then we'll have the tube end up being something like that, sort of out of the way. So that still gives me room on top of the GPU to pose Mega Man. And then we still have to go from here to the CPU. So I'm not entirely sure I'm gonna do that one yet. I'm gonna get this tube cut into the right length first. That way I can see how much room I have. And then technically I have to get that tube in there first and then put this one, that way I have access with my hands to get in there. So this is pretty simple. I'm just gonna kind of mark a little bit longer than I think I need, and then I'll trim it down to the right size. And this is why we keep all of our scraps and things we don't use, because they might come in handy later. All right, so I don't have the collars on there, but there's what that looks like. So you can see we're horizontal. We do have some like room to adjust it if we need based on rotating the fittings. But you can see looking from the front, we've got that nice straight angle. I've got to figure out that CPU run right there. I could have gone to right here probably, but this just worked better, honestly. And what I was thinking is that technically, I don't think there'll be enough room right here. I was like, I could put a second drain there, which would help to drain the upper rad, but that's not that big of a deal. All right, let's go ahead and try the CPU now. But as we come back and look at it, I think having those fittings in the tube are right because of the angled fittings that we have back here. It fills it out. It doesn't look, when it was just the tube, it looked almost too clean because there's so many other white fittings in this build. So that was a neat like Alfred Hitchcock effect. Ooh, sorry, ADD, right? Okay, so here's what I came up with. You can see I've got the CPU tube coming out of the 120 res into the CPU. I've got that kind of sort of a kink. It's not quite as tight as the one down there. But you can see it gets the job done. Initially it looked kind of bad to me, but I think it just works in that particular area. It's on the same plane as what's coming over to the rad. So it's got this nice horizontal line going across the system. And then you can see it paired with the GPU tubing. It doesn't look bad at all. So our GPU, our loop order goes pump through this tube into the rad, cross flow the rad, well, double pass the rad, up into the GPU in, and then into the active backplate, out of the active backplate, into the 120 reservoir. Now I need to make sure I keep the level as high as I possibly can, that way there's no possibility of any air getting down here. Because when it's under vacuum or under, like when it's flowing, it's gonna have a slight vacuum here. We'll pull the level down some. So I need to top this off as much as I can, because if it ever pulls in air, that would be a problem. Anyway, as long as it's fully submerged, it will pull through as if it were a tube. It won't be a problem. Anyway, into the CPU in, out of the CPU, into the upper rad, across, back across again, into my return line that I added to the reservoir, where I drilled and tapped it. Every time I say tap it, I think of something else. Anyway, into the reservoir, and then we're done. So you can see how the loop looks looking straight on. If we kind of move around so you can kind of get some ideas of what it's gonna look like, I think it works really well. And you know what? I'm really glad he chose to put the fittings here, because with the amount of fittings I've got going on, it really does tie it together. And because I did a 90 junction fitting there, I had to do one there or it would look really off. So I don't think it looks bad at all. I think it looks great. There's only one other thing I need to try right now. So I have no idea how I'm gonna do this whole Mega Man thing. We might utilize a 3D printer in some way, but I just decided to throw the Mega Man character in here so we can get an idea of how he's gonna look. I haven't posed him or anything yet. I almost wish I'd run an LED to that to make that light up. But yeah, I feel I might put him down here. I might have him hanging off something or looking like he's jumping or whatnot. Maybe not on the GPU, otherwise it's too busy over here. I don't know, this guy is like super opposable, so he's able to be like posed in pretty much any, I mean, that's kind of neat, but you can oppose him any way you want. I just wish I had one of the bad guys that match, but I can only find Mega Man with this particular company. Otherwise, the other ones are really cartoony looking. So, I don't know, it looks like he's taking a phone call while fighting right now, but it is what it is. That's where the theme has to come in later. See, I don't want him facing that way, because then if you're looking at him, see, it looks like, this looks like he's taking a phone call. I was like, Mega Man, you got Mega Man here. Hold on, fighting Water Man, Bubble Man, whatever. I don't know. It's very detailed though. Anyway, the loop turned out great. What I have to do now is all the wiring and stuff on it. I rarely do the loop first, but I knew the loop was gonna be a challenge. So it's just what I wanted to do to get it out of the way. I always do these builds in different orders because I can never seem to do anything the same way every time. So anyway, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed the little vlog, kind of a ride along, if you will, as I do it. You guys like those kinds of videos and I want to get back to it. And the more I've been sitting here looking at my SM-A8 that's sitting on the floor, I kind of want to do some big like diorama type of build because I could do so much inside of that. That might be the perfect build to utilize some sort of a warships theme because the whole floor could be resined and look like waves and stuff. 2-year project incoming.